Rome remembers some names as heroes, others as enemies. Julius Caesar, however, remains an open wound in Roman memory. Drawn from history. When the last king was overthrown, the city did not breathe a sigh of relief, because they knew this was not the end. Toppling a king was easy. Preventing another from taking his place, that was the real challenge, and so the Republic was born. But it was not a utopia. It was a system woven from fear. No one should hold power for too long. No one should decide alone. No one should ever become indispensable. For centuries, this order worked. But as Rome grew, the Republic began to crack. With every victory, the borders expanded. Wealth poured in. The Senate grew stronger, but the people grew poorer. Soldiers bled for Rome, yet the lands they conquered went to the aristocrats. The Republic treated only the elite as equals. It was into this world that Julius Caesar was born. He came from a noble family. He had a name, but no money. Young Caesar never believed the Senate was just. He knew the truth. This system would never change unless it was forced, but he kept this thought to himself because Rome rewarded obedience, not dreamers, until Sulla arrived. One morning, Rome woke up to lists posted everywhere, names, and beside each one a single word, dead. Sulla was in power. He spoke in the name of the Republic. His first act was to eliminate his enemies one by one. Denunciations began. To appear on the list was a death sentence. Kill, seize the property, collect the reward. Julius Caesar was in his 20s. He was related to Sulla's enemies. Despite Sulla's direct order, he refused to divorce his wife. Sulla made his decision. Caesar's name would be added to the list. Caesar fled, not only from Rome, but from death itself, and the thoughts he had buried inside finally surfaced. Until that day, he had wanted to believe Rome was governed by laws. Now he saw the truth. The laws belonged to those who held power. Months later, Sulla finally spared him, but the words spoken that day were never forgotten. This young man is too rebellious. One day, he will destroy the Republic. When Caesar returned to Rome, he was no longer the same. He still believed in the Republic, but not blindly. He understood something fundamental. This system survived by crushing the weak, and the strong were always right. Caesar worked relentlessly. He gained military glory, mastered the art of rhetoric, built genuine bonds with the people, and most importantly, he learned this. Rome was ruled by fear, and fear was defenseless against a bold man. Julius Caesar had entered the planning phase. In Rome, power came from two sources, money and nobility. Caesar had neither, so he chose a different path. He made the people love him. In accordance with his plans, Caesar deliberately went into debt. He organized magnificent games, held festivals, expanded gladiatorial combat. The Senate mocked him. "This man is ruining himself," they said. What they failed to see was this. Caesar was not buying titles or rank. He was buying loyalty, and in Rome, loyalty was worth more than gold. To the Senate, Caesar was dangerous because he did not obey the rules, but he did not openly break them either. He reminded the people of Marius, of Sulla's massacres, of how the aristocracy had turned its back on them, and he mourned alongside them. For the first time, the Roman people felt taken seriously. As his plan succeeded, his debts grew. Caesar was financially collapsing. That was when two men appeared, Pompey the Great and Marcus Licinius Crassus. One was Rome's greatest general, the other Rome's richest man. They despised each other, but they both liked Caesar because Caesar completed them. Pompey had armies, but weak political support. Crassus had wealth, but no respect from the people. Caesar was the people. An unwritten agreement was born among the three, the First Triumvirate. This was not an alliance, it was a bargain. Caesar would become consul. Pompey would receive land. Crassus would protect his wealth. The Republic was not even part of the discussion. When Caesar was elected consul, the Senate was stunned. For the first time, the system had been manipulated by someone from within. But the real transformation had not yet begun. Far from Rome, among misty forests and endless plains, lay a land known as Gaul. To Rome, Gaul was a frontier, dangerous, frightening, difficult to control. Caesar saw this not as a threat, but as an opportunity. When the Senate sent him to Gaul, their intention was clear: keep him far from Rome and let him be forgotten. But Caesar went to Gaul, writing, planning, calculating. He had only a few legions, facing dozens of tribes. He was outnumbered, but he had one advantage: Roman discipline. The Gallic Wars began. One tribe fell, then another. Caesar was ruthless, but never careless. Some cities were completely destroyed, those most defiant, most dangerous. Others were spared. The message was clear: those who resisted would be annihilated. Those who submitted would live. The war lasted 8 years. For 8 years, Caesar marched with his soldiers and fought beside them. The legions no longer belonged to Rome. They belonged to Caesar. Back in Rome, fear was growing, because the endless reports of victory from Gaul were turning Caesar into a legend. After 8 years of defeat, Vercingetorix emerged, a leader who united the Gallic tribes, a man who challenged Rome itself. They met at Alesia. Caesar was surrounded. Then he surrounded his enemies. He used hunger as a weapon. When Alesia fell, Gaul fell with it. Vercingetorix knelt, laid his weapons at Caesar's feet. Caesar was no longer a general, he was a ruler. The Senate panicked. Pompey withdrew. Crassus was dead in the east. The Triumvirate was over. Rome now had only 2 choices: stop Caesar or submit to him. The Senate made its decision. Caesar would disband his army and return to Rome alone. His authority would be stripped, his immunity revoked. It was a trap. If Caesar entered Rome unarmed, he would be tried and killed. Pompey now stood with the Senate. 2 former allies faced each other. Caesar stopped in the north. Before him lay a small river, the Rubicon. By Roman law, a general could not cross this river with his army. To do so meant rebellion. The soldiers waited in silence at the riverbank. For Caesar, it was the moment of decision. If he turned back, everything was over. If he advanced, Rome would burn. And then the die was cast. Caesar took a step forward. The legions followed him across the Rubicon. At that moment, the Republic entered a path of no return. The Senate knew they could not stop him. This had been their final bluff. When Caesar marched on Rome, the city gates were opened. There was no resistance. Pompey fled. The senators scattered. When Caesar entered the city, no blood was shed. Everyone waited, not in fear, but in curiosity. Upon learning of Pompey's escape, Caesar pursued him. Spain, Greece, Egypt. At Pharsalus, 2 Roman armies faced each other. Pompey had superior numbers, but Caesar possessed unmatched experience and intellect. He attacked, and he won. Pompey fled the battlefield and was murdered in Egypt. His head was presented to Caesar in a box. Caesar looked at it and mourned. Once again, Rome had devoured one of its heroes. With Pompey dead, no rivals remained. Rome now lived in the shadow of a single man. When Caesar returned to Rome, the city had changed. The Senate still existed, but it was powerless. Real authority rested in one hand. Caesar was first granted temporary dictatorship, then it was extended, then extended again, and finally a new decision was made: dictator perpetuo, dictator for life. This was unprecedented in Rome. The Republic still existed on paper, but its spirit was gone. Caesar did not declare himself king. He did not wear a crown. Instead, he began to work immediately. He reformed the calendar, restructured debts, carried out land reforms, expanded the Senate. The people loved him. The army was loyal to him, but the aristocracy was afraid, because Caesar was not merely accumulating power. He was building a new system. The balance that had held Rome together for centuries was breaking apart. Whispers spread through the Senate. Caesar heard the warnings and ignored them. He didn't see himself as a tyrant. He saw himself as Rome's savior. But history is not written by intentions. It is written by consequences, and the consequence was this: Rome was now bound to a single heart. If that heart stopped, everything would stop. And some men wanted exactly that. They called themselves the Liberators, but history remembers them by another name: assassins. Brutus, Cassius, and other senators gathered in the darkness of night. The doors were closed. They all shared the same fear. Rome was no longer free. They did not fear Caesar becoming a king. They feared that kingship had become unnecessary, because the people loved him. The army was loyal. The Senate's approval had become a formality. As long as Caesar lived, the republic they desired would never return. The plan was simple, bloody, and final. March 15th, the Ides of March. Caesar was warned that morning. A soothsayer told him, "Beware the Ides of March." His wife Calpurnia had nightmares. She begged him not to go. For a moment, Caesar hesitated. Then he laughed. The Senate meeting would be held at the theater of Pompey. When Caesar entered, he suspected nothing. They were his friends, his people. But there was an unusual silence in the Senate. No one would meet his eyes. Caesar paid it no mind. And at that very moment, the first blow came, then the second, then the third. Screams echoed. Blood spilled across the marble floor. Caesar staggered back. He did not resist. And then he saw Brutus. Time stopped. You too, Brutus. Under the rain of blades, Caesar collapsed. 23 stab wounds. The most powerful man in Rome died silently on the Senate floor. The assassins rushed outside, their hands stained with blood, and they shouted, "Rome is free!" But the people did not rejoice. The crowd stood silent, shocked, because they understood something. They had not killed a tyrant. They had killed the heart of a civilization. And now, Rome was leaderless. When Caesar died, Rome did not become free. It fell into a void. The assassins had miscalculated one thing. The people did not choose the Republic. They chose stability. And Caesar was stability. When his body was brought to the Forum, Rome held its breath. Then Marcus Antonius stepped onto the platform. He did not draw his sword. He did not threaten. He only spoke. Caesar's blood-stained toga was lifted. Each wound was revealed, one by one. This was Brutus's work, he said. This was Cassius's. The people first wept in grief. Then they roared in rage. The crowd lost control. The houses of senators were burned. The assassins fled the city. Rome was plunged into civil war once again. But this time something was different, because before his death, Caesar had made his final move. After his death, Caesar's will was read. He left money to every Roman citizen, opened his gardens to the public, and most importantly, he named his heir, a young man, quiet, ambitious, Gaius Octavius, known to history as Augustus. Antony, Octavian, and Lepidus joined forces. The Second Triumvirate was formed. But this was not an alliance. It was the prelude to the final war. Antony went east, joined Cleopatra. They stood against Rome. Octavian waited patiently. And when the Battle of Actium came, Antony lost. Cleopatra took her own life. The last great general of the Republic was erased from history. Octavian stood alone. He did not call himself king. He did not call himself dictator. He said only this: "I have restored the Republic." It was a lie, but it was the lie Rome wanted. The Senate remained. Elections continued. But power now rested in one hand. And so, the Roman Republic came to an end. Rome was an empire, but Julius Caesar was never emperor. He changed Rome's destiny forever. And history recorded this truth. Rome was not killed by the ambition of one man, but by a system that collapsed under its own weight. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please subscribe and leave a like. You can also write in the comments which historical topics you'd like to see next. See you in the next video.